Okay, there's the gear shift return spring, I guess, for lack of better words. I forget what Honda calls it. It's right there. So you have to take the cover off you have to pull the drive shaft, take this cover off, take the other side cover off, pull the starter reduction gear, slide the cover off, and then this shaft just pulls out, and the broken spring is right there. There's the other piece of it. And then it engages in here, and that's what returns the kickstart or gear shift to like a neutral position. Ours was flopped all the way down, so we couldn't get the quad into gear. Okay, so I got the new spring installed. It took me a few minutes to figure it out. So it was broke when I, of course, took it apart. But I believe that's how the spring sits into that assembly. And then you just slide your shaft through. And we have to, it's got like a timing mark on the other side, which hopefully we'll remember to show. But there's a peg there, and that assembly slides in there. And then there's a dog or a roller that it engages right there. So then there's the travel of the gear shift, and it springs the foot pedal back. Up one sits flush, down one, which should be neutral. I believe that's how it goes. I'm going to put it back together like that. Okay, so got the cover back on. This is the starter reduction gearing. This one comes in from the engine, and then there's a second gear set that just literally goes in right there, and then it comes up to here, and then this is just the cover. I'm just going to clean it up and then put it on, and then put all the bolts in and put the gear shift on. And I'll probably leave the drive shaft for the four-wheel drive off for right now, but it goes from here to inside the differential where I have that garbage bag shoved in temporarily. Okay, so that's that side pretty much all bolted back up. Just watch. I didn't notice that there's a cable clamp in there when I took it apart, and I couldn't get this cover off for a little bit because right down in here there's a bolt back by the starter that holds this cable for the alternator or whatever this is in here to charge the battery. And then there's a couple bolts down in here, but they're fairly evident. So I'll just whip to the other side and put the gear shift on, for lack of a better term, the timing mark. So here I got it covered in a plastic garbage bag again, just to keep the rainwater out. And I did most of this, well, all of it, in frame. A lot of the videos I watched on YouTube said it's probably best to pull the motor, which it is probably best to pull the motor, but I originally didn't know what the problem was, and I thought the problem was over here on the clutch pack side, and it ended up being that broken return. I knew it was either over here on the clutch packs or that return spring, or we'd be pulling the motor because it was something inside the bottom end of the motor. The transmission had broke. But anyways, so you have to disconnect the two oiler cooler lines. I marked them rear and front. I don't know if they matter. It looks like they just dump in here and here. This is the clutch, of course. This is reverse. This is how it shifts into reverse. You have a couple electric connections for neutral, reverse, and I think that might be oil pressure. And you can cheat it by grounding these to the frame, and then you can start the quad in gear if you need to. it would be nice, but I'm probably not going to modify it permanently to do that. So anyways, I'll just pop this cover off. This is oil filter, but I'll just pop this crankcase cover off and put the gear shift on the timing mark. So that's a look inside the frame, the crankcase cover. When it's pulled off the frame, there's a fork here, and it comes from the other side. So there's a timing mark, there's a dot right there, and an arrow right there. So you just get them together, and then these are your clutch packs, centrifugal clutch, and I forget what the other one's called. And they come off the bottom of the motor and then go into the transmission for your gear selection. There's a screen down here that's hidden. Must be an oil strainer screen. I had it out already. It's pretty clean, so that may be one thing to look at if you've pulled it apart like this. But I'll just throw this back together and then add some oil, and hopefully don't have too much more issue with it and fires right up. To do it in frame though, I did take the pegs, the foot pegs off of both sides. I couldn't pull the covers without pulling the 2 bolts for the peg and pushing the peg down and then jamming the brake underneath one of the bolts. So if you do it in frame, just keep that in mind. I kept getting jammed, and eventually I just pulled it, and it allowed me to do it in frame. So save you a little bit of time pulling the motor and crankcase out of the frame. And if I'd known it was that spring, I probably wouldn't have had to even come off this side, unless, I'm not sure if this will stay in place when you pull the gear shift assembly out to change that spring, but I was able to do it in frame.